What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here alongside Josh Davis. Happy Wednesday evening. It's the Wednesday Link Live. And Josh, there's just nothing to talk about today. We didn't have some sort of mega super giant press conference that I haven't seen the likes of during Week 17 of the National Football League in a very, very long time. I mean, come on. What are we going to talk about tonight?
I know. I was wondering myself. I was like, "There's not a whole lot like you're talking about." It's you're coming off of a loss. No one's really too excited. But come on, we were knowing this was going to happen. Obviously, with AJ Brown, the sarcasm there. We all know we were building up. We were ready to hear from AJ. He hadn't talked in forever. And it was great. It was phenomenal. We'll break it down, talk about it. Curious to hear people in the chat. What's up? How's it going? Be curious to hear their thoughts as well. But I mean, this is. As much as you need a lot of things to happen and a lot of things to go right, I think you at least take this step in the right direction from the presser today. So we'll see. But it was certainly promising. I'll say that.
Yeah, it was definitely promising. And I've seen comments here saying that, I think the Eagles are falling apart, but this press conference did wonders for me. My show that's been up for about 4 or 5 hours has a lot of those comments, people saying, hey, I feel better after hearing this. And let's make two things very, very clear. One, credit to A.J. Brown for being the biggest adult in the room ever for a quote-unquote top-tier wide receiver. When have we seen a top-tier, like top-3 receiver in the league be this grown-up and mature? This doesn't happen, right? Receivers are known to be divas. They go on boats when playoffs are about to happen. They, do all these sorts of things on the football field that we don't like, and yet A.J. Brown stood there in front of the biggest Philadelphia Eagles media scrum I have ever seen and took question after question after question and gave really solid answers, took the blame, was mature, didn't throw anything at his teammates, and even backed Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni. That's the first part. Fantastic. We all agree. The second part is he doesn't have to tell the truth. Like, he can sit there and say, I'm not upset at play calling. I'm not upset at coaching. I'm not upset at the screen pass. I'm really upset at the fact that DeVonta Smith got hurt from the screen pass. I'm not saying he's not lying. I'm not saying that he is lying. But he still is upset with the play calling, right? Like, we all understand that you can say the right things and be the big grown man in the room like he did today and praise him for that nonstop, while also going like, yeah, but like secretly between you and me, you do want those screens to go away, right? Like, and you do kind of want more, motion in the offense and shots across the middle, right? And I think behind the scenes, he'd probably say yes to that as well.
I agree. Yeah, we're thinking it. It's good to see from your leader, the C on the chest. There's a reason that he's got it. But yes, I think that we're all in the same boat of like, look, the tape tells a story. You can look at the film. You can look at anyone who's breaking down the all 22s, regardless of who it is. I mean, it's very blatantly obvious that you can point out what the Eagles offense is or is not and what they're not running. And so, yeah, sure, there's frustrations. And even AJ said it. He's like, hey, look, I'm frustrated. We're all frustrated. So, when we're talking about it, and we've both done a number of shows saying, hey, so-and-so is frustrated. It's like, well, yeah, of course everyone's frustrated. But then whenever they're going to knock it, I think it's just blowing it out of proportion. And AJ even said it. He's like, hey, you guys will write a story making me the monster. And I thought it was really great. And I kind of got a kick out of it because he doesn't call Marcus Hayes out by name, but everyone realizes and understands that's the Philly Inquirer's story that came out about, apparently there's a veteran, unnamed source, but a veteran that told Marcus Hayes, kind of irritated, or can't remember the exact words, but basically irritated that AJ's body language not great for a leader and all these things. And AJ's just saying like, hey, look, I wish that he was here. I wanted to explain myself. Also ask him like, who is that talked to you? Who told you? It's a little strange that, you're covering the team, or at least kind of having a voice on the team, that you don't show up to the presser there. But whatever. What do you make of that? That's crazy.
Oh, I mean, he obviously didn't want to be there to face A.J. Brown. I mean, this isn't okay. I try not to talk about my previous media life because I don't consider myself a member of the media. Like you and I are content creators. We're not media members. There's a big difference between having a YouTube channel and talking about the news of the day and giving your take on it as we do versus being a media member who writes about a football team, who's in the locker room with football teams, who has press conferences with football teams. Big gap, right? And I did that for a little bit, and you did that for a little bit as well. We have a background in that, but we were nowhere near a Philadelphia Eagles locker room, right? We were never in that scenario, but we've been in media scrums, we've been in locker rooms and stuff like that. There is a little bit of pride to your own personal reporting. And when you get a scoop like Marcus Hayes did, I think I said his name right. It's Marcus Hayes of the Inquirer, right? I always blank his last name. Marcus, right?
Yep.
When you get a scoop like that, that is something that you put out there because it helps your newspaper, like the Philadelphia Inquirer, obviously, but it also helps your personal name. I didn't know who Marcus Hayes was until Marcus Hayes dropped this article. But at the same time, if it's a little flimsy, not saying it's not true, I'm sure somebody told him that, but if it's a little flimsy, you're not going to show up to that locker room and face A.J. Brown man to man if it's 100% accurate. Like if Jason Kelce told Marcus Hayes, hey, we got a locker room tear and it's A.J. Brown and it's a bad look for the team, Marcus Hayes would have been there and been like, you want to know who said it? This guy right over here. He said it right to me. My guess is it was some lesser third-string person. It was somebody, who is on the football team but is not a vocal leader or is not a veteran or something to that aspect to where it is technically true and technically you can run with it. But at the same time, you and I both know that there's a lot of, I don't know what the word is. It's not bloviating because, again, they're not trying to make things up. But it is a juicy headline that's going to get reads and cause a stir. And you and I both know any news or what is the phrase? Any news is good news, or all positive
publicity,
media.
Yeah,
publicity.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Well, whatever I'm trying to say. But I'm not saying that Marcus Hayes is lying because he didn't make it up. But is it as truthful as we probably originally read into it as being? I don't think so.
That's true. Yeah. And actually, I guess the the ARS bench here says he calls him out by name at the very end. I suppose that's true. At the initial part, he's just saying like, who was it? But that's true. To your point, though, I mean, yeah, it's one of those stories. I believe I don't want to knock him more than maybe we should, but I think wasn't Marcus the one that? No, I know you weren't, but wasn't Marcus the one that had said? He may have misspoken a little bit, but I think he's the one who said early in the season, like Jalen Hurts is the most what was it, lacking self-confidence player or something like that.
I think he was.
I think he may have been. So he's always usually on the very opinionated side. That's why he's got the column and gets all the reads and kind of that side. But you know what? Hey, you know what? He might have gotten something, and understandably, everyone's going to be frustrated. Everyone's going to be upset, like AJ said. But it's just gets blown up a little bit more. I just love the fact that he was able to combat it. He comes back and shares, the truth on it, being open. And, I think like a lot of people here, saying that AJ is becoming, Ohana Means Family says, what's up, Thomas Joss? AJ is slowly becoming one of my favorite players of all time. So, there you go. It helped him. It certainly did. And, the truth will be, or I guess the question will be, does that affect the playoff chances? Does that impact the morale? Can the team kind of come around this and say like, hey, this is going to be the season changing? I don't know. I want it to. I think all of us want it to. We want to look back or, point back to this after the postseason and say that was it. That was the time that just something changed. They all bought in. Maybe, but we've seen and heard so many great things. We've seen and heard a lot of great pressers coming away from it going like, all right, we're going to get some change. We're going to get some difference here. And we just don't see it on the field. So I'm hopeful. I am hopeful this galvanizes the group, the squad. They come together. They're doing escape rooms together also, which is great, I guess, whatever builds team chemistry. But it's just at this point, I'm kind of sitting here, as I know a lot of people are, of just prove it to me. Show me, don't tell me. So for what that's worth anyway.
Have you ever done an escape room? Are you like a seasoned escape room veteran?
Yeah. Have you ever done one?
I have, but how did they fit 53 people into an escape room? How many escape rooms did they have to go to fit the whole team in there? Must have been a lot of escape rooms, okay? Because those things are small.
Corporate escape rooms. Well, you could do it like a corporate one. You could do ones with bigger, amounts of people. And I'm sure if the Eagles called, they could probably figure out a place to be like, hey, we got the whole offense coming. We're gonna do that. But I agree with yes, you got to have a very large escape room in that sense.
Okay, this whole idea that it's going to fix where Philadelphia is at right now, and I want to throw up Cold Cash's super chat here because we always throw super chats up. Bird's got a bright future as long as they fix the staff. I would agree with that. We're going to talk about the staff in a second. But in terms of fixing things, I've gone back and forth on this because I thought about being glass half full Thomas today or glass half empty Thomas today because there's two ways to look at this, right? Yes, it will galvanize. Yes, they were 1 or 2 plays away from beating the Cardinals. If they had beaten the Cardinals by 7, we would be talking about a completely different story today because it would be all about how we're the 2 seed and we're getting hot at just the right time and they've won 2 in a row and they're going to roll the Giants and now the Cowboys got to go on the road. That could be glass half full Thomas. But glass half empty Thomas watched the game on Sunday and the offense wasn't the issue. Like, we've made the entire week about the offense, and yet we haven't talked about the defense once. I had to sit on my computer today as I was writing my show, because it was obviously AJ heavy, AJ press conference, and I had to go, wait a second. What was the problem with the Philadelphia Eagles against the Cardinals? It wasn't AJ Brown. It wasn't really play calling until that final possession. It was the defense getting worked, like getting obliterated. The worst defensive performance we've seen in Philadelphia, at least all year. and that I can recently remember. Like, it's been a long time, and so I had to kind of slide in some stuff about the defense because I think it's important. If the defense can figure it out, this team can be a threat in the postseason because of the offense. But if the defense is what you get against the Arizona Cardinals going forward, they will be one and done. And that's my whole problem right now of this whole, is AJ going to fix the whole culture? AJ might make the offense a little bit better, but what does that mean? They score 35 instead of 31? They score 31 instead of 27? Like, they're not getting blanked. It's the defense that's getting worked. And so, I don't know. Let's hope Jordan Davis and Haason Reddick and Josh Sweat were listening to the A.J. Brown press conference and they channel it and they try and get better, because if there's any controversy that needs to be brewing in Philadelphia, it's not A.J. Brown or the Eagles offense. It's the fact that we are literally fielding a bottom 3 defense statistically in many major categories in the NFL right now, and that's why I really can't be glass half full Thomas as much as I want to be right now, because I too loved A.J. Brown today.
I would, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I've had so many people that after the loss against the Cardinals, they're like, look, man, I appreciate your optimism. Like, I try to be the eternal optimist. And they're like, yes, you finally got to come back to earth. You know, so I agree. I was like, I understand. Like, on the recap, on the last show that I did, like, I don't know exactly what to say that's positive, you know? And so you try to spin this thing as far as the presser and all the things like you're mentioning. Totally agree. We've got comments here as well of saying, let's see, Guy Jordan this season is becoming its own kind of escape room. That is a great analogy. Like, how do we get out? How do we figure this thing out? You know?
Yeah.
And the defense too, it does get overshadowed, I think, because you look at, I don't know, there's been this talk the entire season, I think, right? And sometimes understandably so, of going like, well, we're missing some guys. We've got some guys that are injured, or we've got some guys that we lost, and we thought we might replace them, but then it's like, yeah, maybe not. You know, the guys that we lost, turns out we lost a little bit more significant, and TJ Edwards and CJ Gardner-Johnson, like players that probably would have played a difference. But still, you come back to it, you made a coaching change, and you hoped and thought maybe that it would change something. And like you mentioned, the defense was not just bad, it was historically bad. Like, the worst defensive grade. Ben Solak did a deal on it that I mentioned on my show a couple days ago. Ben Solak said it is the worst defensive efficiency grade for the Eagles since 2011. Like, that tells you all you need to know. That is way too long amount of time. You don't want to start going back multiple seasons, let alone a decade plus. So when you talk about that type of deficiency, yeah, you're not going to make anything happen. If the defense can't stop, if we can't force a single punt, I mean, are you kidding me? One punt, that's not a lot to ask. We have one punt during the game and you win it. But I understand it's not like we don't have flaws other places. And I think it's just that situational play calling that compounds it. And everyone goes, we've got all these playmakers on offense. We've got all these abilities here, and everyone wants to continue to talk about it because, sure, the offense should carry the team. I'm not disagreeing. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But yeah, if the defense could have gotten one stop, certainly 2 stops, but just one stop, this is a totally different ball game, totally different conversation, because then we are harping completely, and should be harping completely, on the offense to go, well, hey, you know what? It's another time of, can you close out the game? And no, they can't, because we see that every single time. But this defense is one that, I mean, I don't know. I try to spin it every single way. I've seen arguments that I'm going to talk about on the show, probably coming out later tonight too, of like, you know, similarities of Baltimore in 2012. And like, as much as I want to get behind that, like, it's one of those, it's one thing, like you were talking about, it's one thing when you have like a mediocre in some areas, right? And then you're kind of like, okay, we can find something. Right. It's another thing when your bottom 3, as you're sharing, it's just, I don't know that you make that big of a jump, you know, it's just one of those I can't fathom. So I'm struggling. There's not a ton of optimism, but I guess never say never, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the 2012 comparison because of the wins and losses with the Ravens team, and I'm sure you'll have the graphic up tonight. But I thought back to the 2017 Philadelphia Super Bowl team, right? And we do forget that Wentz goes down. They have a horrible game against the Raiders 2 weeks later. They played kind of good against the Giants, like Foles threw 3 touchdowns. Terrible game against the Raiders. They literally limp into the postseason, and everybody picks one and done. Like, I worked on First Thing First that year. Nick Wright and the rest of the panel said if there's one and done top 4 seed, it's Philadelphia. And they didn't look good against the Falcons. The offense was terrible. The defense carried them. Like, it wasn't until the NFC title game that they got hot. And so technically, Philly gets in, as they obviously are. They can easily upset a bad Tampa Bay Bucks team. They might be favored in that game, by the way. Did you watch the Bucks this past Sunday against the Saints? Like, you know, the whole Baker Mayfield is back sort of thing is very hit or miss. But
True.
technically, if they were mediocre on defense, they could have a, out-of-body experience on the road against Dallas or San Francisco and win that game. But the fact that they are bottom 3 right now and getting wrecked by every team that they play, even if they have an out-of-body experience, they then become a mediocre sort of defense, right, in terms of the overall scaling. And if they become a mediocre defense at best, at their absolute peak in the postseason, the offense has to be perfect. And we've seen so far, the offense has not been perfect. Hurts has too many turnovers. They don't run block as well as we thought that they would. They don't commit to the run as much as they should. Their play calling is, it's not great at best. I mean, we're not offensive geniuses, but we can watch film and at least point out simple facts like why isn't there a slant and that's all go routes and there's a zero blitz and it doesn't look good. So I will try and be positive, and I will root like hell for Philadelphia. And I think they will win the divisional round against the Bucs. Like, I think that they're going to win that game by 10. But if you told me right now, Thomas, you have to put your house on Philadelphia winning a second playoff game, would you do it? And I'll give you 3-1 odds as well. I wouldn't take it.
No, honestly, like you're more optimistic than me, and I do think that you can beat the Bucs, but man, I don't know. I'm just there's so much concern now where I'm saying like I don't even know if you could do that because it's difficult to beat a team twice in a row, and we already went to Tampa and we took it to them for sure. We no doubt we dominated. That was a great game.
Like 10 years
Little
ago.
flaws there, but it did right. And there's so many changes now to where I'm going like I don't know. Baker's looked better. He looked terrible last week, but he's looked better. And Mike Evans has started to play a little bit better, or definitely played better throughout the season. So like if they find some vibes, if they get the home crowd behind them. I don't know. It's a different game. I still, if you forced me to take someone, I would probably lean towards Philly being able to win that game, but it's not near as confident as it should be. Yeah. And it's crazy that we're even talking about it. So I don't know. I'm with you on the fact that there's very little to trust with this team because of the body of work. And, at the beginning of the season, it's strange because at the beginning of the season, we were both saying like, hey, this team's record-wise predictions, I'm going to give them 11 wins, maybe 12, somewhere around there. But I don't think it was the 11 to 12 wins based on how they've won those games and based on looking at the analytics, because like you said, the analytics tell you the story. You go look up. I mean, you can search it on YouTube, but just type in Eagles offense and you're going to find a number of videos that are going to tell you the same story. And Brett Coleman had a great one of the Eagles run a high school offense, and he breaks it down of the percentages of how often they're running the inside zone and how just telegraphed everything is. There's no just difficulties or defenses trying to game plan against something. And so, you talk about it, it's like, look, whenever a non-professional coach can just lay it out here and say, well, hey, look, they're going to run this and they're going to do this. And they're 68% of the time, whenever they're in 12 personnel, they're going to decide to run the ball. And whenever they're in 11 personnel, they're going to pass the ball 67% of the time. If we can pick out those numbers, then you better bet the defensive coordinators are saying, well, we know exactly what they're going to do and we can easily stop it. So that's where I'm at. It's kind of like concerns on that side, but I don't know. We'll see. I know we've got several comments to get here too. Also some updates real quick. I saw these earlier, but questions as far as the injury updates. Avonte Maddox elbow, limited practice. I mean, hopefully it's not a major concern, but
doesn't seem like
I
it.
guess we'll see. Slay potential to get back. I highly doubt that he does
plays. Either.
I mean,
no.
It'd be strange to see the starters. We got Ohana Main's family saying, do you think the Eagles will play the starters at all? What do you think? Do you think they'll go with any starters on Sunday? We'll get a limited, half and half type of deal, or just some of them? I don't know.
I think half and half makes sense. I think that you go out there and you scoreboard watch the entire time. I mean, the problem is that there is a whole idea to trying to get hot, right? If you could go out and win 31-10 against the Giants and have no turnovers and the defense forces 4 punts, gets 2 interceptions, and we all are happy-go-lucky, great. But what you don't want is to have a close win or a close loss against the Giants. You don't want to have to, scratch and claw on what's supposed to be a snowy MetLife Stadium. Turf's already a little bit shaky. Like, it's scary. So what you do is you scoreboard watch. And this whole idea that they won't scoreboard watch is ridiculous. Like, MetLife Stadium will have, here's the score, and you'll have people on the sideline with cell phones. Like, you can, hey, what's the Cowboys score? If the Cowboys and Commanders are close, which we know the Washington Commanders, at any given week, they can be the worst or the best team in the National Football League. I mean, come on, they played us like crazy the past 2 times that we played them. If they keep it close and it's 10-10 at halftime, you got to go try and win this one, because 2 versus 5, as we knew going into this previous week, is a massive, massive difference. So I would scoreboard watch, but if it's 17-3 at halftime, Dallas, yank the starters, enjoy your half off, give Mariota a little bit of run, and you got 3 wins left to go to a Super Bowl, right? You got to kind of get ready for the Bucs. Whether they do that or not is up to them. So, Vastaflow says, Thomas Dunn, don't talk about our defense. I will have nightmares. Okay, I'm sorry. I know. We all do as well. And Paul mentioned about the comparison to the 2012 Raven team. They had Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, and Terrell Suggs. So, we don't really have those players on our defense. Let me ask you this, though. I thought about this earlier.
12th. I was going to say, I believe they're 12th in defensive rankings, which is, much better, obviously, than 28th or 29th, wherever we fall. So.
Right, and that's what Bald Eagle said here, too. Ravens team was missing Lewis for 5 games. Yeah, that's a good point, too.
Yeah.
So Philadelphia had 3 big departures on defense: C.J. Gardner-Johnson, T.J. Edwards, and obviously Javon Hargrave. If I told you that Philadelphia could have kept 2 of the 3, right, any 2 of the 3 that you want, would this defense be significantly better than what it is right now? Like, let's just take Hargrave out of it, right? Because they got Jalen Carter. TJ Edwards and CJ Gardner-Johnson, because that's what everyone says. If we would have kept those 2, we should have kept those 2. Would Philadelphia be significantly better in your mind right now?
Yeah.
You do? Okay.
They would, and I mean, it's kind of relative, right? Because we're terrible, so anything would help, I suppose.
True.
But like, I don't know exactly what I'm saying with that, like rankings, but I just throw it out there. It's all hypothetical, so who cares? But I'd say maybe like 20th defensive. If we had both of them, I really think we'd be there. Because granted, you could have injuries, so maybe they get injured. But if they stay healthy, right? I'm just saying, and I got raked over the coals for this, and I get it. But I posted and said, "Hey, big L for Howie for losing T.J. Edwards." I understand that he went to Chicago and he wanted to go back. I'm just saying. Yeah, because people are like, he wanted to go to Chicago, and he accepted it 15 minutes into free agency, and you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, look, I didn't post it to say like, there was obviously not a chance or whatever, or Howie's not trying. Howie did try. I would just love to know, how much more did he offer? Was it just like 500,000? Was it $1 million? How much more? Because TJ Edwards would have made a difference for sure. And I'm curious too, because you take a look at the teams that are at the top, not all of them, but take a look at a couple of the really big contenders. You take the 49ers and you take the Baltimore Ravens. And what are they very, very strong at? They're strong a linebacker. Like for as much as a lot of the league is going away from it, I know there's a lot of other pieces too. They got good D lines, they're pressuring the quarterback. They're good secondaries, all that. I know it's a complimentary. Denard Wilson is in Baltimore. So, hey, could we have kept him? That would have been probably a big difference. But like still, I think there's a little bit more than how he wants to admit and how he wants to recognize for a linebacker. So yeah, I think keeping a TJ Edwards, keeping a CJ Gardner-Johnson would have made a difference. Again, it's all hypotheticals, hindsight's 2020, but it's just, there's an extra commanding presence, I think, whenever you've got that linebacker. And Zach Cunningham, hey, he's played well when he's on the field. He's been banged up, had some injury issues. You got to Shaq Leonard, who, he's got moments. He played pretty good against the Giants, run stop, but he's terrible in coverage. He just doesn't have the athleticism. And then Nicholas Morrow, through the first, 2 games of the season, was like, oh my gosh, he's leading in all PFF grades. And then everybody figured out how to attack him in the coverage. And now it's, a very big liability. So I don't know. There's never a win coverage.
I can't believe how bad he is in coverage. And I wanted that dude to be good so bad. I said he was the leading tackler for the Bears.
Technically, he was.
It's just like, oh my gosh, it's horrible in coverage. I mean, literally, like when you and I go through and edit our recap videos, we're watching. You basically have to watch the highlights like over and over and over again because you're finding what you want to talk about. Every single defensive possession, it's like, okay, I need to find. I'm talking about the Eagle defense being bad. I need a video of Kyler Murray passing and making a completion. Okay. It was all on Nicholas Morrow. Everyone I watched was, it's 41 again. Oh, okay, 41 again. It was like, oh my goodness. I'm bad.
Telling you, I guarantee you, this is without a doubt, because you're right. Every time that we're going to recap it, we're going through and looking and watching these several different times. All they have to do is you line up as a quarterback, and if your first hot read on a blitz is going to be over the middle, look at where Nicholas Morrow is and be like, perfect. That's exactly who I'm going to throw against. And if you're going to throw on the outside, where's James Bradbury? Oh, there he is. Perfect. That's my guy that I'm going to. It's so easy. And I know the play calling's terrible, as we know, because they make it even easier where they back up the guys 10 yards and say, hey, you want to take 7? We'll go right ahead. But the players themselves have not been making plays. And, AJ didn't call out anybody specifically, but he just said as a whole, hey, it's not on the coaches, it's on us. Now, I don't know if he fully believes that, we can argue, because I think that there's other areas and we see it on the film, like we've mentioned, but the players are also not playing great. I mean, let's be honest, certainly on the defensive side. So I don't know. We got comments of other teams being able to beat us in the playoffs. And, I
Let's
don't
talk
know
about
that
that
we're
in a second.
necessarily confident in that area,
Let's
but
talk about
we'll
that in a
see.
second. Guy Jordan says Eagles 2024 draft board with the super chat. Linebacker, safety, cornerback, linebacker. Maybe not that, but pretty much that, right? Like you need all three of those positions.
Yes, yeah.
You need all three of those positions. And I know that they drafted Sidney Brown and they still have Nakobe Dean and Eli Ricks and Keely Ringo are all possibilities. But we've seen possibilities come and go in the NFL every single year. Like you can be good your rookie year and be not good. You can be bad like Nolan Smith has been this year and be really good next year. But they need to address all three of those positions either in the draft or in free agency. And you know how we will. It's just a matter of how much better can they actually be, who's the coordinator of the defense, and so on and so forth. When talking about I saw the comment that you saw. It was the one that says Lions taking care of y'all in the playoffs. Can we at least talk about the fact that the NFC playoffs this year are absolutely fascinating? Like, hang on.
Yeah.
Let me see. Let me pull up the NFL playoff picture. I'm going to get it up on our screen just so we can look at it here because I think it's absolutely fascinating if I can figure out how my computer works. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to do this live, make sure I have it all pulled up properly. Okay, so this is the NFL playoff picture. Everyone can see this on our screen. Now, these are obviously your 1, 2, 3, or your top 3 seeds, and then, the Eagles sitting there at number 5. So let's just forget about these teams for a second. Go down to seeds 4, 5, and 6, and 7, right? So the Bucs are the 4, Eagles are the 5, Rams are the 6, and it's either Seattle or Green Bay for the 7. I think it's going to be Green Bay. Most people do as well because they're a lot harder than Seattle. Let's assume it's Green Bay. If the playoffs were to start tonight, you would have, and Green Bay was in at the 7, okay, just bear with me. It would be Green Bay, okay, now I got to scroll up here, sorry. It would be Green Bay against the Dallas Cowboys. It would then be the Rams versus the Lions, and then Bucs versus the Eagles. The Eagles have the most favorable upset matchup of those because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have shown to us many times, 7 times in exact, including last week, they're not as good as many people think they are. They're in the worst division in football. Let's assume Philly wins that first game, okay? Now, it doesn't guarantee it. As you said, let's assume. Are you telling me that one of these bottom 2 teams, whether it's the Rams, the Seahawks, or the Packers, can't pull off an upset? Like, if they pull off of an upset of either Detroit or Dallas, the entire playoff picture changes. I'm not saying the Eagles are going to get hot because I'm not going to try and convince you we're making a Super Bowl run, and I'm not trying to be that guy because I'm as negative as everyone else is. I watched this team play this past week. But you do understand the Eagles are 1 win on their own and 1 low seed win away from having a much easier path to the postseason and potentially hosting a playoff game. We need to at least understand that.
That's true. That's true. Now,
that might be too positive, but still.
I could definitely see LA beating Detroit.
Yes.
I mean, it's a possibility. So you put that out there. Certainly the way that they've been playing.
LA is resting their starters too. Carson Wentz will start for LA, and that means that the LA Chargers or the LA Rams want Dallas. They want to be the 7th seed, by the way. That's very clear. Yeah. They want the Dallas Cowboys, and they could go on the road and beat Dallas for sure. For sure.
They could. And they got destroyed by them earlier in the season, but it's a completely different team, as we know. Different team. Even whenever we played them, I would be a lot more concerned than whenever we played them. And that was still, a relatively close game, closer than it needed to be because we didn't take care of business. But yes, it's like they're a difficult team. And Detroit's fascinating to me because there's times where you watch them play and you're like, wow, this team, they play physical. They can be good. If they're taking care of the ball, they're not turning it over. There's a lot of potential there. And then other times you're like, what are you doing? And again, I know there's hiccups and everybody plays that way at times, but still Detroit could, I mean, they could make something happen and still win. So then you don't have the upset, but yes, I think there's some options there. I don't know. I mean, if you're all of a sudden, you'd end up going to, well, I guess technically you could possibly go to Dallas. That would be wild.
Right.
Go to Dallas for a playoff game. Right. That was a terrible experience last time. It can't be worse, right? I mean, it can't be as bad as it was in Dallas.
It's so hard to not be positive just because I want them to win one playoff game. It makes life so much more fun. If you win one, you get a whole other week, and then you do one sleep on a Saturday, and you wake up as the divisional round. It's this whole different aura versus a wild card round. But it does actually have a possibility if you were to get help from either Detroit or the Cowboys to lose in that first round. Philadelphia's path becomes a lot more interesting, but I don't think we need to talk about that too much just because a lot of people don't believe that would happen. Bald Eagle says Rams beating Lions might be the spark we need. It's true. You never know. And let me just say this, just to finish my glass half full positive thoughts here. All it takes is going on a run. And this isn't rocket science. We've seen it happen. The New York Giants did it twice, right? The Green Bay Packers did it a while ago, whenever they beat us in that wild card game. You can get hot, have flaws on your team, and make a run. But what Philadelphia has to do is clean up a majority of their flaws, and that's the problem. They should have done it last week, and they didn't, hence why a lot of us are wondering if that's even going to be a possibility.
Right, yeah.
Gruzman says, sorry, let me read this real quick. If the offense ran more, had sustained drive, defense be on the field less, and get less tired, which would help them out. I totally agree with that, but they don't like to run for some reason, so,
Yeah, for whatever reason. Maybe that changes
Great
in playoffs.
idea. Maybe.
The idea that we've been, like dumbing down the play calling and we haven't unleashed Rashad Penny and we're saving all these things for the playoffs.
It's like stupidest conspiracy theory.
I would love it. I would love it.
Idea.
But the conspiracy, it's like, speaking of conspiracy theories, though, let's just go ahead and throw this out there. Why not?
Okay.
This is we're talking about these random things.
Yes.
So I would say to you, the only chance that the Eagles have at winning the Super Bowl is if Jason Kelce announces his retirement before the playoffs start. Because
yes,
Ray Lewis did the exact same thing in 2012. And we brought up the Ravens and the similarities there. And he comes out and announces it January 3rd or whatever it is, right before they're about to play the Colts. And he says, this is my last ride. I told the team, this is it. So first off, the conspiracy for people that believe that it's scripted, there's nothing better than to say that Jason Kelce is done and it's his last season. Now, if you don't believe that the NFL is scripted, still, the only thing that could really give the extra oomph to this team that still may not work, though, but would be, guys, look, I've thought about it. I'm done. Like, this is my last ride. You give everything that you got, and, maybe we send Jason off riding into the sunset.
Hey,
who knows if it works, but
I love it.
I don't know of a better theory of saying, like, let's give him one last ride.
Right. Now, the only problem with that theory is Kelce such a me, myself, and I guy? Like, he would never do that. But it would make sense. Like, if it was me and I was a legend like that, I feel like you would give somebody a heads up. I mean, all the legends did it. You were at Derek Jeter's last game at Yankee Stadium when you lived in New York City. Like, you went to that, he announced the whole thing. It's this big deal, and he's Derek Jeter. I think that Kelce should do it, but will he do it is probably a different thing. But again, you go on a little bit of run. The Eagles had motivation in 2017 because they were not supposed to be there. They lost their MVP quarterback, and then underdogs. No one believes in us. The first one seed to ever not be favorited in a game, in the postseason, at least in the first round or whatever, or second round, whatever it was. If you can find something, then you can find some motivation. So, we'll see what happens there. Let me ask you about Nick Sirianni.
I was going to say one last thing real quick. Randall says, unfortunately, Kelce can't play defense or it might work. So
that's a good point, Randall.
That's what we keep talking about.
That is a great point. Yep, that is a very, very good point. Yeah, Ryan said even if Kelce did, the defense still gives up 35. Yeah, it's true. It's very, very true.
That's our fault.
That's a good point. Okay, let me ask you about Nick Sirianni because this is something that has completely disappeared in 24 hours. It's amazing what the A.J. Brown press conference did. Nick Sirianni should be buying A.J. Brown one of those edible arrangements or a box of chocolates or, shoes for his kid or whatever he wants. He should get for him right now because what A.J. Brown did today took the entire bullseye off of Nick Sirianni. Not to say we still aren't, Sirianni's not that great. Maybe Sirianni's a little this and that. But we were 2 days ago in full fire Sirianni talk. All the major radio stations did it. 97.5 The Fanatic and John Kincaid, formerly here in Atlanta. He had Adam Schefter on and asked Adam Schefter, are they going to fire Nick Sirianni? Like, it was all over the news. And then A.J. Brown comes out, puts his big boy pants on, has the most adult conversation we've seen a diva wide receiver have in the history of the NFL, and say, hey, not Sirianni's fault, not Brian Johnson's fault. We changed the play call. We were ad-libbing in the Seahawks game, which is a fascinating take, by the way, if that's true. If it's not, also a fascinating take. But we are no longer talking today, anyone, about firing Nick Sirianni. If Philadelphia, let me give you the scenario, loses by 10 to the Bucs, they lose 27-17 to Tampa Bay. Does Nick Sirianni have his job in 2024?
Oh, my gosh.
You have to bet your house on what you think would actually happen. He stays or goes.
Yeah. I think he's going to stay.
Okay.
That would be brutal, and it's going to be really hard. I know that all the fire Sirianni is going to be amped up to the extreme, turned up to 11. But it's like, there's very little, even as bad as it's been, just stumbling to the finish line. I don't know. I can't really see it happening.
Yeah.
I would think that there's a possibility that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it takes. I mean, even if you get blown out, like let's say it's a 30-3 or something, I don't know. Like that
Yeah.
might just absolutely abysmal showing the playoffs, possibly, but it feels like that the first reaction would say, all right, look, as bad as it is, and Sirianni, these reports of did he lose the locker room? We don't know. Players frustrated, all this other stuff. It seems like they would give it one more ride and say, look, you're coaching for your job in 2024. We're going to fire the coordinator. We're going to scrap it. We're going to start over. And I would also feel like at that point that Lurie and Roseman and whoever else needs to, have a say in it is like, as much as you love the offense, Nick, you got to give it up. We're going to have somebody else come in and they're running the offense, and you're going to be the head coach, and you're going to do, game management, stick with the players, do the rah-rah and all that. But like, this is it. This is your final ride. I feel like that's the way that it would happen. I don't know. It's hard to say what it would take, but I feel like he's still going to get one more chance, but it'll be tough. And that's crazy to say. I know for some people to like, hey, he's got what is it? Like 60, 80 win percentage or whatever.
High.
I mean, really high. But I've seen all the stuff too and talked about on the show. It's like, just because you win a Super Bowl, Doug Peterson, like if you don't stay here for too long, all of a sudden you're like, sorry, we're going to scrap it, start over.
Yeah, I mean, Badland Bully says three playoff appearances or 3 straight playoff appearances. He's not going anywhere. Knox Break says, I think Nick has 1 year left to fix it. I say, the K-Dude says, I'd say Nick give one more chance. We lose the wild card, then fire him. Okay, the one pushback I have, because I agree, like if I was going to bet money, then I would obviously go ahead and be like, hey, they're going to keep him because they probably will. But if you fire your coordinators, who are you replacing them with? Like I thought about this today because it's different when you are hiring a head coach, and a head coach will normally have his guys, right? Sirianni had his guys. He had Shane Steichen, who worked on his staff. He had Jonathan Gannon, who worked on his staff. Like he has this core knit of like, I work with these people. I know they're diamonds in the rough. Just wait till I get a job. You're coming with me. When he now has been a head coach, all he knows is the people around him. And right now, we know the people around him aren't that great. Like, if the people around him were good, they would be firing the coordinators, right? Hence why Steichen and Gannon got new jobs, because they were really good and they went on to be head coaches. That's my one fear with keeping him if you fire the coordinators. Like, if you just clean house, but everyone but Sirianni is, who are you replacing him with? Unless you're telling me that Frank Reich is out there and wants to waltz into Philadelphia and I guess, do some charity work because he's already being paid a boatload of money by the Carolina Panthers. Okay, but you've said before, did you watch Carolina this year? I know they're, offensively challenged, but you would think an offensive play caller would fix that, right? I mean, look at the Cleveland Browns. They're very offensively challenged, So that's my one fear. And the other thought process is, too, this is a very good offseason for coaches. Like, normally you get to an offseason like the one where they hired Sirianni, you go back through that class, most of those guys are gone. It wasn't a good year for coaches. Like, if you had a head coaching vacancy, it's like, there ain't a lot out there. Let's hire Nick Sirianni. We all went, who? This year is different. Jim Harbaugh's name is getting thrown around. Bob, what's the Lions guy's name? I mean, he is just a superstar, and somebody is going to hire him. What is his name? Ben Johnson. Thank you.
Ben Johnson.
Eric Bieniemy's name is going to be out there. Bill Belichick's name is out there, although for all I saw way too many comments saying the Eagles should hire Bill Belichick. I'm out on that. I'm just saying his name's out there. This is the year to go all in to get a head coach. And so that needs to be taken into consideration when we talk about potentially getting blown in a playoff game and Philadelphia getting rid of coordinators but not a head coach. There is the idea of, well, what if you got Ben Johnson and Ben Johnson goes and hires this, young hotshot quarterback coach that he loved whenever he was in Detroit and brings him over to Philadelphia and he's next Shane Steichen, right? That's just my one thing I've been playing out of my head the past couple of days. Yeah. This whole idea of you fire everybody but you keep Sirianni. Who is Sirianni replacing these people with? Because he didn't pick Denard Wilson, and it looked like that was a miss on his overall judgment. So are we sure he's going to pick the right people? Because he didn't this year.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's a great question, and it's so hard to know because obviously, none of us are in those conversations, and even the features that we get, and even the press conferences and the beat writers and all that, like no one knows for sure. They can speculate, they can write some certain things, they can have some sources. But we don't really know because even Jonathan Gannon comes out with a whole basically like I told him what to do, and Nick Sirianni is like, I'm not going to talk about it. So it's like at first we're like, oh, JG's lying, and he has lied before. So then but then you see some things kind of add up and you go, well, maybe he was telling the truth about this part. So it's just so hard to know, right? And there's so many things. I would be curious. I mean, at the very beginning of when we started doing this, Jim Leonard was like my top pick. Defensive coordinator, I was like, let's
Yes.
go get Jim Leonard.
Yes.
There's lots of other possibilities there too on the defensive side. Again, do you scrap both? Do they say like, well, offense wasn't terrible? Well, offense wasn't dead last. Offense wasn't near the bottom. I still feel like that's kind of surely they won't look at it that way. If you lose, especially if you lose to the Bucks, you got to say, look, we have way too much talent to just be okay with like, we were 12th or whatever it ends up being,
Right.
like that. There's too much there. So it's a good point. I mean, if Nick stays, does he, how much control at that point? I feel like if you get to that situation, then you're saying, hey, look, you don't have a say. We're bringing in somebody. We're just making up this entire offense. But there are good names, like you mentioned. It's just a question of, will Sirianni be okay with that? Can he be the like hands off because he loves his offense? He loves to meddle. He loves to get in there and be like, okay, hey, maybe we can change this. Maybe we can run this specific play.
Right.
It'd be like, hey, bro, sorry, you're out of it. Like you don't get any says. You don't get any, in certain situations even like, oh, hey, we're going to run this. It's a full on, it's someone else's offense. It's someone else's play calling. And you can manage the game. I don't know. I mean, he'd have to be okay, I assume, at that point. But
yes.
It's just crazy that you go from as effective as it was, and he just hasn't changed. Like it's one thing whenever, and I know we all know this because we see the analytics, we see the charts and all this other stuff. I hate being an outlier. I think most people would agree on that. It's good if it's in the good sense, right? If we're looking at like points per game or whatever. But like when you're looking at it in terms of motion, for example, it's already bad to be dead last. It's another thing to be the second to last team and then a drop off the cliff and there's Philly. Like you're not even like a couple of percentage points away. It's like 7% you lower, or whatever it is like there. But it's a lot. And so it's like, what are you doing? We're so far behind the times, but I don't understand how it can be that drastic. And yet Sirianni is going like, we're good. We don't need to change it. Like the NFL is a copycat league. And I understand not everything is going to be copycat, but if something works and the rest of the league is shifting towards it and you're going, hey, our offense is kind of struggling here. Like maybe we need to implement something else, but it's kind of just been like turn a blind eye and say, we'll do our own thing. We think it works. Yeah. When the rest of the league is looking at it and you see most of the top offenses are like, hey, we use motion. We try to get guys involved. We make things easier for our players. Even though they're playmakers, we make things easier. And you just don't see it. It's really infuriating.
Think about the RPO. I mean, no one really ran the RPO until what's his name? I'm blanking on his name right now. Doug Peterson and Nick Foles implemented it to perfection and won a Super Bowl behind it. Like they won the Super Bowl because of the RPO. It made Nick Foles so darn comfortable. Now the whole entire league runs the RPO because they know it's a very, very good thing for young quarterbacks who don't have to make a bunch of reads. It's like, okay, ball here, read the end, take it, give it, or read a linebacker, throw it behind. Like it's very simple. So, you got to bring in the modern NFL offense that includes a ton of motion and a ton of movement across the middle of the field because defenses are always at a disadvantage in the modern NFL. And if you're not taking advantage of that, you're doing yourself a disservice. And you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. And Eric, it's real quick, just too, as we're talking about it also, I mean, on the defensive side, I mean, it goes both ways. Again, Nick's not the defensive-minded coach, but I fully believe that he wants a hand in how the defense is run. Like, I don't think that he likes the aggressive defense. I really don't. For some reason, he likes hey, let's have a soft shell. Let's not give up the big play, but we're just going to, you can kind of beat us. It can be a death by 1,000 paper cuts. It can be a bend but don't break. And I would say the same thing. Like, if we're going to shake this thing up, Nick, you don't get a say. Like, even if that's normally what you would prefer is this, defense that's going to contain everything. If you give up a big play here or there, I want an aggressive defense. Like, make something happen. Stop just I hate it every single game. I know everybody does, but just let a team march down the field every single play. Oh, there's a 3rd and 6. They're going to convert it. Like, do something. Force a play to happen and be aggressive on it. It just drives me crazy. So I would love to see the difference there. I don't know if we will. Shout out here real quick. Mike Grimm says, hey, man, I love the channel. Today is my wife and her boyfriend's anniversary. Can I get a shout out? There's a shout out. I don't know what exact. There's a problem there, I think, but unless you're the boyfriend,
you caught yourself.
There's your shout out.
Yeah, shout out to him too. Congrats. Eric Guzman says, fire Sirianni after the Giants game. Have Thomas Mott coach during playoffs. No thanks. I think Sirianni skated with great coaches last year. I don't hate the idea, although you wouldn't want me coaching out there because it would get ugly very, very quick. Straight up, would you rather have Eric Bieniemy or Nick Sirianni the head coach of the Eagles in 2024? Straight up. You get to
Oh,
decide
gosh.
right now, Josh. Which would you decide?
Oh my gosh.
You don't get to interview either of them. You just right now you make the decision. Bieniemy or Sirianni, you have to pick. Go.
This is so tough. You're putting me on the spot. I mean,
Tough.
based on what he's done, I think Bieniemy, like,
Okay. A lot of comments would agree with you.
I think so. It's so tough because I like Sirianni mostly for the person that he is, right? There's things that he says, I'm kind of like, come on, man. But it's press conference, it's PC stuff. He's not going to give us the truth a lot of time. But like, I like him as a person for the most part, and you know the vibes that he brings at times. But it's grown old. Like the rhetoric is old. The same type of comments and the rah rah and not really changing things. So yeah, probably. Even though there's reports of Bieniemy too, and some players like the rift, or that he's like real rigid and strict. But maybe that helps. He certainly has the game plan, like the scheme that could come in. So
who knows?
I don't know.
I think hiring NFL head coaches is probably one of the hardest things to do because there's no way to know. Like if you think that Howie and the Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie knew Sirianni was going to go to three straight playoff appearances and make a Super Bowl, you're crazy. They don't know. It is such a gamble. Unless you're hiring Andy Reid from Philadelphia, you know what you're getting. It's such a gamble. It's so hard to do. I would not want that to happen. Guy wants me to play linebacker too. You do not want that because I'm 5'9", 160 pounds. So you do not want me to play linebacker at all. Not happening. But I mean,
we'll see.
Would I be as bad in coverage as Nicholas Morrow? I don't know. I mean, that would be a very interesting experiment. Although I still think Nicholas would beat me, but it would be a lot closer because he's really bad. So, what are you going to do there? All right, let's wrap things up here really quickly. Dark Dank Kelly Green Burrito is a fun one. Says Bieniemy isn't a head coach, so we don't know. There you go. We don't know. It's great.
It's all true.
Point.
It's all speculation. We would assume, but who knows?
Magellan says, I'm so sick of Sirianni pissing on my leg and telling me it's raining. He does do that.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard, though, and I thought about this the other day because I was watching a Jalen Hurts press conference, and Hurts says the same stuff over and over and over again. And I had written in my script that I was going to get annoyed at it because I was, but then I went back and said, what do I want him to say? What do I want him to go?
True.
Like, hey, guys, I'm sick of the offense. Brian Johnson stinks. Trust me, if we did this, it would be fixed. And it's like, that's never going to happen. Like, what Nick Sirianni and what Brian Johnson and what Jalen Hurts say in press conferences, it's what we would all say. Josh, what's wrong with the offense right now? You're the quarterback. You'd say, well, we got to quit making some mistakes, and we need to be a little bit better here, and it's on me to not throw intercept. Like, what do we want them to say? It's so hard for me to go, Sirianni's so annoying at the podium, and then going, wait, what do I want Nick Sirianni to tell me? Like, have you watched Bill Belichick's press conferences? Like,
yeah,
it's much worse. He says nothing. It's like, it's interesting.
Yep. You got a Bill Belichick, a Greg Popovich.
Yes,
you get the greats a lot of times, and they're literally not going to say a word. So you're right. We're not expecting a whole lot. It's just, I guess the only thing is like whenever it's the same type of issue and you're just going to keep saying the exact same thing and double down on it, that's where it gets a little bit old of like either just don't say anything at this point or I don't know. It just gets a little bit frustrating. But by the way, Christopher, good show. My birthday. So I guess it's his birthday. Happy birthday to you. By the way, Mike, we do care.
It's not his wife's boyfriend's birthday. It's his actual birthday, right? We're making sure.
Well, so Mike was the one with the comment previously. Actually, it's Chris's birthday. So, but then Mike said that they don't care, but we do care. We do care, Chris. Happy birthday to you. We care about all you guys. Seriously.
Yes,
we appreciate all the support. We try to read as many comments as we can, but again, you guys know sometimes we just get carried away, but we definitely
Josh and I do read the probably 95% of the comments on every single actual daily show that we do, by the way. If you were wondering about that, we might not heart or comment every single one. We see it, though. So if you are constantly commenting and haven't been answered, we do read those things. So the YouTube Studio app makes sure that we see every single one. So Latin Inferno says the game plan is implemented by Howie and the analytic department. The coaches follow suit. Reason why nothing changes no matter who the coaches are. See, that's such a hard thing to say because then that means Howie Roseman won the Super Bowl last year, right? And Howie Roseman's still here. So why are we running the offense from last year? Like I've heard this rumor before that it's the analytic department and Howie who run the offense. But if it's the analytic and Howie department that runs the offense, then why is it different this year? Why don't we? Yeah. It's very different from last year's offense. We all know it. It's very different.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing, it's like, it's a very similar offense in the sense of just like what they're. I don't agree with that theory, but it's true that like the the offense as a whole is fairly similar, except for the play calling itself is
Right.
different. So,
Right.
I mean, that's just there's I highly doubt that. I'm sorry. Like as much as we might be frustrated and there's not changes and other things, it's like it's a Sirianni scheme. Like if you look and see
Mhm.
what he likes to do, what his preferences are, it's kind of more on that standpoint. I mean, sure, maybe they hire
Yeah.
a guy saying, "Well, we know that this is what you do, so we can control it." Okay, I mean, you're always going to try to build a team off of the scheme. So like that would make sense of, hey, what is Howie like? Analytics, what players are they going to draft? Who are they going to try to build the team around? That okay, but like when it truly comes down to who is running the offense, I don't know that you go necessarily as far as saying it's a Howie Roseman situation there.
I would totally agree. Let's go vast to flow, and then we'll wrap things up here. Do you guys think once Cunningham and Slay come back, we'll get this defense back on track? Cunningham hasn't been 100%, neither is Slay. It is. It will be better. How much better is a great question, but it will be better. So if you wanted to be, glass half full Thomas, like we tried to be at the beginning, but failed at doing so,
Glass.
then
Yep.
then this is what you would say, right? Because you can beat the Bucks with this team. You should beat the Bucks with this team. Okay, you should. Whether they do or not is up to them, but they should, and then they should go into Dallas, be a 4.5-point underdog, and keep it within one score. They should. They should do that. So
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
should.
I mean, it's it's hard to be like glass half full. Maybe I could be like glass third full at this point.
There you go.
It's not where we're at, but there's possibility. Manuel Campos says, me and my 10-year-old daughter Aubrey having dinner watching you guys. Give her something good to tell her Cowboys fans classmates tomorrow, fellas. Love the
Man.
channels. We appreciate the support.
What are we gonna tell Aubrey?
How do you tell the Cowboys fans?
No. Aubrey should look her Cowboy fans friends in the eye and say, when was the last time you guys won a divisional round playoff game? That's what they should
probably
ask
the
them.
easy. Yeah, that's the good one to go
And
with.
then
Yeah.
you say,
Let's see what they say.
I am literally, this is Aubrey, I'm being a 10-year-old Aubrey here, 2 of my lifetimes. It's been almost 2.5 of my lifetime since you guys won a Super Bowl. And I'm 10. And then you're good. That's it. That's all you got to say.
Yeah. They can't say anything about that because their
Aubrey
friends won't
wasn't
even know.
even-
They'll be like, when was the last time they won? When was the last time they went to the Super Bowl?
Aubrey's
Do you
dad might
remember?
not even have been thinking about having a kid the last time the Cowboys won a Super Bowl, depending on if Aubrey has siblings. But, we don't want to get too
Yeah.
detailed there. But, that's what I would say,
That's true.
Aubrey.
I love it.
Say very nicely, but any Cowboy fan can't come back from that. Like, they can't. Like what are you going to say? Oh, well, it was 1996, and like, what? So that's what I would say to Aubrey, but we appreciate it.
I think there's a lot of denial. Like I talked to a Cowboys fan today, and he's like, man, like it's cool that we're probably going to win the division, but honestly, I'm still fearful of the playoffs because we know what usually happens. So like, I think that's the realism of most Cowboys fans. There's some out there that are delusional or thinking like it's our year every year, but like, I feel like everyone's about in that area. So I don't know. Carla T says, love you guys. We love you too. We appreciate it.
There you go. Big Marshall says, we better hope Howie wins his Madden matchup because that's our game plan SMH. I do love the comparisons of the Eagles offense to a Madden offense because it's very similar. Very similar.
You just go back to the recent plays, right? You call about 8 plays to start the game, and then you just go back to the recent plays list. And you just call it every single time.
Yep. That's what works. All right, we're going to wrap things up here. Josh is going to finish up his daily show, so be sure to stay tuned for him to go ahead and drop that. I'm curious to see his thoughts on, obviously, everything going on with A.J. Brown. Obviously, be subscribed for the remainder of the week and the rest of the year. Like, we got plenty of stuff happening, win, lose, or draw, and the offseason is when we really get into our bread and butter, talking about who Philadelphia's going to get, the rumors on this guy, the trade with that guy. It's going to be a wild offseason, so be sure to stay tuned for that. We appreciate you guys every single Wednesday and all the amounts of views we get during the week that is not taken for granted for both Josh and myself. So 100%.
And we will absolutely. Yes, we appreciate all the support. And just a reminder, everybody or pretty much everyone probably knows this, but we'll be live during the Eagles game. So as we're watch party, hanging out, reactions, hopefully maybe there's something extra to cheer for if Dallas struggles early. Give us a little bit extra. But yes, we'll be doing that. So come hang out. We have a blast.
There you go. All right. For Josh Davis, I'm Thomas Mott. Wednesday Link signing off. See you guys on Sunday.
Go Birds.